This is the Gskyer Telescope, the 70mm aperture and 400mm focal length model with an AZ mount. I've had this for a bit now, and a few people asked me about it, so here's my take. This is clearly made for basic astronomy and casual daytime viewing. I have mainly used it for looking at the moon, checking out a few bright planets, and viewing distant objects during the day. It is small enough to pack into the included carrying bag, so I can take it outside without dealing with a large or heavy setup. The telescope tube has a clean white finish with black parts around the focuser and lens. It feels reasonably solid when I pick it up. The tripod is much lighter and does not feel as sturdy as the tube. That difference became noticeable once I started using it at higher magnification. Setup is simple after I know where everything goes. I attach the tube to the mount, open the tripod, add the diagonal, and put in an eyepiece. I do not need tools for normal assembly. It only takes a few minutes once I have done it a couple of times. The instructions could be clearer. I had to spend some time working out how to align the small finder scope. I found it easier to do that during the day. I aimed the main telescope at a distant object, centered it with a 25mm eyepiece, and then adjusted the finder scope until the crosshairs pointed at the same place. After that, finding the moon and other bright objects at night became much easier. The 70mm aperture gathers enough light for clear views of the moon. With the 25mm eyepiece, which gives about 16 times magnification, I could see craters, darker lunar areas, and uneven details along the edge. The image looked clear and bright without being difficult to keep centered. The included 10mm eyepiece brings the magnification to about 40 times. It lets me see smaller lunar details, but it also makes every movement more obvious. Touching the focus knob causes the image to shake for a few seconds. A light breeze can also affect it. I usually keep the tripod legs as short as I comfortably can because that helps with stability. There is also a 3x Barlow lens. It can increase magnification with either eyepiece, but the highest number is not always the most useful setting. At 120 times magnification, the image gets softer, the field of view becomes narrow, and the shaking is harder to control. I had better results using the 25mm or 10mm eyepiece without pushing the Barlow too far. I could see Jupiter as a bright disk and spot its 4 larger moons under decent conditions. Saturn's rings were also visible as a small shape around the planet. I could not see a lot of fine detail. This telescope does not have the aperture or stable mount needed for detailed planetary viewing. I also noticed a little color fringing around very bright objects. That is common with short beginner refractors like this one. Deep sky viewing is limited. Bright star clusters are possible when the sky is dark, but faint galaxies and nebulae are not what I would buy this for. Light pollution also makes a big difference. My experience was much better away from streetlights, even though the telescope itself stayed the same. The 45-degree diagonal gives an upright image. I like that for daytime viewing because distant trees, buildings, boats, or wildlife appear in the correct orientation. It also makes this more useful outside astronomy. The angle is less comfortable when I point the telescope high into the night sky. I sometimes need to crouch or use a low chair because the tripod does not extend high enough for comfortable standing use. The phone adapter works, but it takes patience. I have to line up the phone camera with the center of the eyepiece. If the alignment is slightly off, I get a dark circle or part of the image disappears. The phone also adds weight near the eyepiece, which makes the shaking worse. The wireless remote helps once the phone is positioned correctly. I can take a picture without touching the screen and moving the telescope. I got usable moon photos this way. They were not highly detailed astronomy images, but they were clear enough to share. I would treat the phone setup as a simple way to record what I see rather than a serious astrophotography system. The carrying bag is one of the more practical parts of the package. The tube, tripod, and accessories fit inside, and I do not need separate cases. Compared with longer beginner refractors I have seen, this one is easier to fit in a car or carry to a darker location. A larger telescope can show more detail, but it also takes more effort to move and set up. One concern I had before using it was whether a 70mm telescope would be too small. For the moon, daytime viewing, and basic views of bright planets, it is enough. The bigger concern turned out to be the tripod. The optics can produce a decent image, but the light mount makes focusing and tracking harder than they need to be. I also had to adjust my expectations about magnification. The included parts can technically reach higher power, but that does not mean the view will always look better. I usually get a cleaner and easier viewing experience at lower or medium power. Starting with the 25mm eyepiece also makes targets much easier to locate. This makes the most sense for me as a beginner telescope, a family telescope, or a portable option for camping and short trips. It works well when I want a quick look at the moon without carrying a large setup. I would not choose it if my main goal were faint galaxies, detailed planet views, or long exposure photography. I also want to mention basic safety. I never point it at the sun unless I have a proper solar filter made for the front of the telescope. Looking at the sun through this telescope without the correct equipment can cause permanent eye damage. My take is pretty simple. The Gskyer Telescope gives me clear moon views, useful daytime viewing, and an easy setup in a small package. The tripod shakes, the viewing height is limited, and high magnification is not its strong point. If I understand those limits and want something basic and portable, it is a reasonable place to start. If I already know that I want detailed astronomy, I would save for a larger telescope with a heavier mount. I will post full information about the Gskyer Telescope in the comments section. Thank you for watching.